In about half an hour or so, we are going to be joined in studio by Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine. He'll be chatting with us a little later. You can actually call in if you have a comment or question of the doctor or for the doctor, and he'll give his best answer for you, perhaps point you in the direction you need to go. Also coming up a little later in the program, and it's a rotation that we have with members of the Twin Falls City Council. Now, if it's not today, it's next Wednesday. We move this around a little bit. But I believe we may be seeing Sean Berger, counselor, coming by a little later in the program, sit down and chat with us for a little while about some issues around town. In the meantime, I wanted to open the program today. I had an interesting notice when I got up this morning. I got out of bed at about 3:55. Yeah, 3:55 this morning, and I managed to start getting a few things around, ready for work about 4 o'clock. And I happened to see a notification that I had been added to a Facebook group. Now, this is one of those closed groups, but it's a group that is very concerned about what's been going on with refugee resettlement programs here in Idaho. And they have added me to this group where the discussion is going on, but I assume since it's a closed group, I can't say too much about where they meet and the like. Also, on Friday morning, and I believe he's going to join us for about 10 to 15 minutes. We have the former Republican candidate for governor in Washington State. His name is Pastor, the Reverend Mr. Shahram Hadian. I believe it's Hadian and not Hadian, but he's going to be joining us on Friday, and he is going to be speaking at several events in Twin Falls County next week. And he did an interview the other day with Dana Loesch at Glenn Beck's network. She, of course, has one of the shows on the Beck channel, if you will, which is now on some cable systems, which is quite a step up. People were demanding it, obviously. And he did an interview with her, and he focused on what's going on in Twin Falls and Boise and the trouble that we're going to be seeing if we continue down this road. He's going to be talking about it at a couple of events next week. He's going to make an appearance at a church in Filer, and then he's doing a luncheon in the Twin Falls area. I have posted Dana Loesch's interview with him at our Facebook page. That is News Radio 1310 KLIX, if you'd like to take a look at that. And here's what I'll share with you. People are asking me when and where. Well, much like the reason they have a closed group having a discussion about all of this is because there are some serious concerns. And Pastor Hadian has actually been threatened, just like we've seen happen to Brigitte Gabriel. The Islamic radicals don't like these people because they're calling attention to the truth. So the pastor comes here, he's going to speak, and it'll be somewhat of a last-minute notification of where he's going to be at. We're not in the business of saying, look, for all of you Islamic radicals listening out there, here's exactly where you can find him. That's not really what we'd like to do. But I'm telling you that there's going to be some organization involved with this, and a lot of churches on the local level are working with him. So he's going to have a good crowd, and I do believe they're going to be inviting some business leaders as well as some local politicians to his presentation at the luncheon next Wednesday. I'll say this. Those who don't show up will pretty well answer the question about where they stand on a great many of these issues. It's 10 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. 69, we're on our way to a high probably today, not nearly as warm as yesterday. There's supposed to be some rain at some point today. This is not an all-day event, and some rain tomorrow, and again, not an all-day event. And then a nice hot weekend, upper 80s with a lot of sunshine coming. A good weekend for recreation on the way. I have a couple of notes I'd like to share with you. First of all, this closed group on Facebook that I was invited to join, they're having a meeting on Monday night to discuss some of these issues. They are not too pleased about what happened on Monday afternoon at the College of Southern Idaho, where the Board of Trustees, which also oversees the refugee resettlement program in this community, and it's pretty much decided that resettling 300 Syrian Muslims here in October and then perhaps more later is a slam dunk. They don't want to hear from anybody. They don't want to hear from the opposition. They'd like to claim, well, we only had a handful of people come in. Well, that's because you cut off comment after just half an hour. And now people are going to have to give 48 hours notice if they'd like to comment at a meeting. I don't know how you can call that in any way democratic. Your taxpayer money supports these institutions. You understand that. This is clear. Your taxpayer money. And yet these people are telling you you can have absolutely no say or very little say in this matter. And there were a great many people who showed up at the meeting on Monday who did not have an opportunity to speak. They were denied that opportunity because these guys on this board are simply burying their heads in the sand. I'm told that there will be an election coming up in November, at least for some of them. And perhaps we can find some candidates who might have a bit more of an open mind about this particular issue and actually have some sort of a runoff, because my guess is that these seats are often uncontested. Maybe this year that shouldn't be the case. I'm also told by sources within that some of these trustees feel they are caught between a rock and a hard place. But they, again, I brought this up yesterday, you have to ask where the spine is. These jellyfish, they're afraid of coming out and actually siding with the majority of the people in the Magic Valley. They are doing their best to dodge this issue, and they are just hoping that it goes away. Somehow that someone will snap fingers and suddenly the sun will come out, everything will be rosy, and there won't be any issues that follow this. Pastor Hadian says in this video, and again, if you go to our Facebook page, newsradio1310.com, you can see it there. He says, and he's very adamant about this, there is simply no way to screen these people that are coming from Syria, because even the Syrians don't know who is who in these refugee camps. Our telephone number, if you'd like to reach the program, 736-0300. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX, as well as newsradio1310.com online. That means you can hear us anywhere all over the world by clicking on the Listen Live icon. Bill Colley with you on Top Story, and you're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. You know, one, I think we should pressure the college and let them know they're coming up for election. And if they want to treat us that way, they need to go away. Just that simple. Two, if your speaker needs any form of public protection, kind of like the military places have been getting, I think they ask, and I think they'll get a lot of it.
Well, I think they pretty well determined they already need security, and I think they've set that up in advance.
Okay, yeah. Three, anybody out there listening to me right now that is an American patriot, you should put a flag on your car and support your country. Show other people that we have pride of where we live. And if you don't like it, pack up, man. Get out.
Hey, I like that thought. Thank you. Hey, speaking of packing up and getting out, General Wesley Clark, he's retired now from the U.S. military. Do you know that Wesley Clark, up until the mid-1990s, was considered one of the most right-of-center officers in the U.S. military? He was pro-life. He was conservative in his views, believed in a strong military, was a devout Southern Baptist. And yet, after he fell in during the war in the Balkans with the Clintons, he was from Little Rock originally, and he ended up falling in with the Clintons. He suddenly adopted a new tune and became what you might call one of the loudest liberal Democrats in the country, even running as a candidate for president in the Democrat primaries in 2004. He was being interviewed on MSDNC yesterday by Thomas Roberts, and Clark says he has a solution for radical Islam.
Well, we've got to identify the people who are most likely to be radicalized. We've got to cut this off at the beginning. There are always a certain number of young people who are alienated. They don't get a job, they lost a girlfriend, their family doesn't feel happy here. And we can watch the signs of that, and there are members of the community who will reach out to those people and bring them back in and encourage them to look at their blessings here. But I do think on a national policy level, we need to look at what self-radicalization means, because we are at war with this group of terrorists. They do have an ideology. In World War II, if someone supported Nazi Germany at the expense of the United States, we didn't say that was freedom of speech. We put him in a camp. They were prisoners of war. So if these people are radicalized and they don't support the United States and they're disloyal to the United States as a matter of principle, fine, that's their right. It's our right and our obligation to segregate them from the normal community for the duration of the conflict.
He's talking about concentration camps for American Muslims. And yet the critics are saying, all right, if you get to that point and then President Obama designates other groups as enemies, will there be concentration camps for the rest of us? Question I think we have to take seriously. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story. It's 8:16 and 70. What's on your mind?
Hey, Bill, I just wanted to let everybody know I attended the meeting for the first time on Monday, and the board of trustees, they didn't even look at the audience. For the most part, they looked down. There was no comment, no dialogue, and someone mentioned, why don't they have these meetings when people, I had to take time off work to be there and take vacation leave, so why don't they do this at night so people can attend, people that work can attend? And the fact that they allowed no dialogue, it's ridiculous. And I'm very upset about it. And I heard about the meeting by chance listening to you. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you, and I thank you for attending. It's just a shame that that a number of people who wanted to voice their concerns were simply shut down, because you've got media elites in this community, and you've got some people in government, and you certainly have some in business. They don't want this thing to go anywhere beyond what it already has. They're trying to bring an end to it and trying to silence any of this dissent.
Right, and my husband went with me, and he said that he felt like the Board of Trustees have already made a decision, and they were their demeanor was put off. They were not smiling, not friendly, not. He was amazed.
Well, what do we expect?
It went down.
These men have their stones all sitting in a formaldehyde jar somewhere else, so obviously they don't have access to that, and that obviously leads to a lack of courage.
Right.
I thank you much for the telephone call. The governor of Wyoming told this refugee resettlement program, take a hike. The entire state of Wyoming does not participate in it. If they're doing it, why aren't we? You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX.
Yeah, Bill, we need to go to the city and county officials and just stop it, demand as property owners in the city and the county, tell them stop their paychecks.
Well, here's a thought. What exactly do our three county commissioners do? I've never heard a peep out of them, and I'm not sure that anyone else has any idea what they do. They meet this morning, by the way, from what I understand about the schedule.
Again, do that. Stop their paychecks.
Well, we've got to make a decision on how we best do that. You start telling them, sorry, on tax day you're not getting anything out of me. They will come for you in that case. Keep that in mind. You'll be the bad guy. The potential time bombs they'll be importing to this country and settling in this valley, they're the good guys. Remember that. You're the bad guy because you're questioning them, and they all know better. Hey, we've got more on this topic coming up in just a moment. In fact, I'll take a couple more of your telephone calls. Did you know the President of the United States, after pressure, has decided to lower the flag at the White House? Finally, to half-staff in honor of the 5 dead men, servicemen killed last week in Tennessee. Finally, he's decided to do it. It only took him about 40 minutes to put up the gay flag after the court ruling. When was the last time you asked your friend for some medical advice? Well, you've got a chance again in about 10 minutes. We'll be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tripp from Tripp Family Medicine between 8:30 and 9 o'clock this morning. He's going to be talking about some of the differences, and there are some big ones, between a small family practice like his and the big corporate assembly line style practices you find elsewhere. And the differences in care are often dramatic, personal care especially. If you've got a comment or question for him, feel free to give us a shout in the next half hour. That's coming up in just a few minutes. His office is located on Fillmore Street right here in Twin Falls, across from the main post office. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. I have this quickly. This is why we're dealing with an enemy, and there are so many people who are they're in denial about what we're facing when it comes to the Islamic world. Can I share this with you quickly? I'll get to my telephone callers in just a moment. Over the weekend, the leader of Iran, the Mad Mullah, Khomeini is his name, had a rally, and he got the crowd all whipped into a frenzy, and they were screaming death to America and death to Israel. And he said that we are 180 degrees opposed to them and our policies in the Middle East. This is after a treaty was fashioned by Secretary of State John Kerry. Kerry was asked what he thought about that by a reporter from Saudi Arabia, and he says, "If it's the policy, it's very disturbing, it's very troubling." John Kerry, tough guy. 8:25. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. It's 8:25.
When we say we need to do something, we should have been doing something 20 years ago. And see, as these people become more set in their ways, they begin to ignore us, and they say to themselves, well, they really don't understand completely. So we can listen to them, but really, in order for them to truly understand, they'd have to have sat in our seat and understand what we understand. Well, the truth of the matter is they are elected officials, or in this case with this College of Southern Idaho, this is public money. It's our money. If we really want these people to stand up and pay attention, we have got to show up. I'm not bragging here, but I've been showing up for years, but I feel alone. And we can talk about it. We can call Bill Colley and say stuff all day long, but that ain't going to change it. We've actually got to show the hell up.
Yeah, I agree.
If you want the commissioner's number, it's 736-4068. 736-4068. Here's the College of Southern Idaho's number, 732-6214. 732-6214. People, this is already, can you imagine if we're getting ignored by the Board of Trustees of CSI, how the people in Washington, D.C. think about us? We're so far down the road towards something that we may never be able to repair. It's frightening.
I agree. I thank you much for the call. If Lindsey Graham answers the phone at the commissioner's office, you know he got assigned a new number. He needed one. His other one was getting tens of thousands of telephone calls, and he just couldn't keep up with all. We'll talk about that a little later in the program during our daily Donald Trump segment. Well, you've got to have a daily segment, I think, at this point. Woman who was let go from the College of Southern Idaho a year ago in January, she says that she was let go as a vice president. Her name is Edith Santo. She is a refugee who came here from Romania. She said that she wasn't getting paid as much as the men for the same job, and feels that she was discriminated against. Of course, she was probably a Christian, so that she doesn't have to be treated with kid gloves. 828, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Senator Jeff Sessions, he's from Alabama. He got up on the Senate floor. MRC TV has a link to this. This is 11 pages long. He started listing the names of people who came to this country as refugees and then committed horrific crimes. Here are just a sampling of them. The Boston bombers invited in as refugees. A Moroccan national who came to the U.S. on a student visa was arrested for plotting to blow up a university and a federal courthouse. 7 Somali Americans in Minnesota have been charged with trying to join ISIS. There's more. An Uzbek refugee living in Boise was arrested and charged with providing support to a terrorist organization in the form of teaching terror recruits how to build bombs. He was planning an attack either on the Air Guard base or at Mountain Home. An American citizen whose family is from Syria was sentenced for plotting to support ISIS and rob a gun store to kill members of the American military. Here's another one. An immigrant from Syria, who later applied for and received U.S. citizenship, was accused by federal prosecutors of planning to go to a military base in Texas and kill 3 or 4 Americans execution style. A college student who immigrated from Somalia, who later applied for and received U.S. citizenship, attempted to blow up a Christmas tree lighting ceremony. An immigrant from Afghanistan, who later applied for and received citizenship and became a legal permanent resident, had planned to help kill American soldiers and Marines in Afghanistan. An Iraqi immigrant who later applied for and received U.S. citizenship was arrested for lying to federal agents about pledging allegiance to ISIS. 2 immigrants from Pakistan who later applied for and received U.S. citizenship were sentenced to decades-long prison sentences for plotting to detonate a bomb in New York. An immigrant from Yemen who later applied for and received U.S. citizenship was arrested for trying to join ISIS. He was also charged with attempting to illegally buy firearms to try to shoot American military personnel. We have a hard break. That means I have to stop. 11 pages of these names. 11, and that's just scratching the surface. Those are people we know of at the moment. 8:30, Bill Colley with you. Dr. Jonathan Tripp coming up in just a couple of minutes. Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine on the way on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 71.